Those words carried the weight of 1,000 stars, and in that moment the quiet life of one man ended forever. Daniel was an ordinary human worker on the edge of the galaxy, living in a small outpost colony where traders from many species came. Together, he had chosen this distant life to avoid the noise of the crowded core worlds. He liked the silence, the long days fixing machines, the evenings when he could sit outside and watch two suns fall behind the mountains of red stone. He thought nothing in this place could disturb his peace, but destiny often comes when one is not looking. The colony was holding its yearly trade gathering, a time when humans and aliens filled the wide square with colors, sounds, and smells. From 100 worlds, Daniel walked among the stalls, buying food and parts he needed for work. He was not a man who liked crowds, but tonight felt different. The air was alive with voices, and there was music made from strange instruments. He almost forgot the loneliness that usually pressed on him when he saw families and friends laughing together. As he passed near a stall of glowing fabrics, he heard a sharp cry. He turned quickly and saw two young alien women, their skin faintly shimmering in the lantern light, standing near a heavy cargo sled that had slipped from its hold. It was sliding toward them, full of metal boxes that could crush them if it fell. Without thinking, Daniel ran forward. His hands pushed hard against the sled, and with all his strength, he stopped its fall. His arms burned with pain, but he held it steady until others rushed in to secure it. The crowd clapped, and the two alien sisters stared at him with wide eyes. They had never seen a human before, not this close. Their kind was tall and graceful, their eyes glowing softly in the dark. They looked at him with a mix of fear and wonder. He smiled at them in the way humans do, trying to ease their shock. One of them whispered something in her language, and the other reached a trembling hand as if to thank him. Daniel thought nothing of it. To him it was only natural to help. He bowed his head slightly and walked away, not knowing that a single touch, a single act, had just tied his life to theirs forever. But not all eyes in the crowd were pleased. At the edge of the square, a tall figure watched. She was their mother, a woman of power and status among her people. Her expression was cold and her steps heavy as she approached. The crowd grew silent. Daniel felt the change but did not understand. Until she stood before him. Her presence was like the shadow of a great storm. Her voice carried across the gathering, low yet sharp enough to cut the air. "You touched my daughters, human. Now there is no escape. Galactic law demands you as their mate." The words struck Daniel like a blow. He thought he had misheard. The people around them began to whisper, some with shock, some with laughter, some with pity. He felt heat rise in his chest. "What? I don't understand," he said. But his voice was small in the face of her authority. The mother stepped closer. Her eyes were fixed on him, burning with anger and with something deeper, something ancient. "Our law is older than your stars. To touch the daughters of my house is to claim them. Whether by accident or by choice, it does not matter. The bond is sealed." Daniel shook his head, his heart racing. He wanted to protest, to explain he had only helped, that he meant nothing by it. But the crowd was already turning, murmuring of fate, of law, of destiny. The daughters themselves looked torn. One of them lowered her eyes as if ashamed. The other seemed almost ready to speak, but her mother's gaze silenced her. In that moment, Daniel realized that what had begun as a night of simple trade had become a chain around his life. He was no longer free. He was caught in a web of rules he did not know, rules that did not care about his human mind or his human choice. He felt anger rise, but also fear. What would they do to him if he refused? Would he be forced away from his colony, from the small life he had built? Would these people, strangers only minutes ago, now decide his future? The mother raised her hand and the crowd fell quiet again. "You will come with us. The council will hear of this. There can be no denial." The stars themselves demand obedience to the law. Daniel wanted to run, but his legs would not move. He felt the eyes of everyone upon him. He had been invisible for so long, a man on the edge of the galaxy that nobody noticed. But now every look, every whisper, was about him. And the weight of it was crushing. The sisters moved to stand on either side of him. He could sense their unease, their breaths unsteady, their bodies tense. They were not his enemies, yet they were not his saviors either. They were bound to him by something older than choice. The crowd parted as the mother led them away from the square. Daniel's mind spun with questions he could not yet ask. What law was this? What punishment awaited him? And why did the daughters, though silent, look at him with eyes that carried not only fear, but something else he could not name? As the night deepened, the colony's lights faded behind them. Daniel felt the walls of destiny closing in. What he thought was a simple act of kindness had become a sentence written in the language of stars, a law he could not break. And though he walked among them as a prisoner of fate, a voice inside him whispered that this was only the beginning, and the true danger had yet to come. The night after the trade gathering should have been quiet like all the others, but Daniel could not find peace. The alien guards had brought him to a great stone hall at the edge of the colony, where the visitors from that proud species kept their home. The walls glowed with faint blue light, carved with symbols that looked older than any history he had studied. The air was heavy with incense that carried a bitter taste, and every sound echoed as if the hall itself wanted him to remember every word spoken inside. He sat at the center of the hall while the alien mother stood tall before him. The two daughters stood behind her, their faces pale in the strange light. Their shimmering eyes avoided his as if they felt trapped in the same way he did, yet they dared not speak. Daniel's chest was tight. He had faced many dangers in his life, but this was different. A broken machine could be repaired, a storm could be waited out, but this law was like a chain that wrapped around his soul. He wanted to shout that it was unfair, that it was madness to bind someone's future to a single touch. But he could see in the way the mother stood, in the way the guards waited silently, that nothing he said would matter unless he understood what kind of law he was now under. Finally, the mother spoke, her voice carrying the calm of someone who did not need to raise it to be obeyed. You are human, and perhaps you do not know the ways of the stars. But ignorance does not protect you. My daughters are of my bloodline, a house as old as this galaxy itself. To touch them, to defend them, to hold them as you did, is to place a claim, even if you did not mean it. Our laws see no accident. The act itself is enough. The bond is written, you are chosen. Daniel shook his head, his throat dry. I saved them, that's all. On my world, helping someone is not a binding promise. It was just the right thing to do. You can't take away my life because of this. The mother's eyes narrowed, glowing brighter. Human words mean nothing against the laws of the council. Do you think we are weak to let anyone touch our daughters without consequence? That path would bring dishonor, chaos, and shame. No, our people were forged on the edge of war. The law is what binds us together, and it does not bend for strangers. The words struck him like stones. He felt anger rising, but behind the anger was fear. He thought of the quiet mornings in his workshop, the simple meals, the way the suns painted the sky at dusk. Was all of that already lost? One of the daughters finally looked at him, her voice trembling as she spoke. Mother, he did not know. He is not of our kind. Perhaps the council will understand. But the mother raised her hand, silencing her. The council does not forgive ignorance. They will judge. If he proves unworthy, he will pay the price. If he proves worthy, the bond will stand and he will belong to us. Daniel felt the weight of the words belong to us. He was not a man who liked chains of any kind. His whole life, he had run from them. That was why he lived here on the edge of the stars, far from the powerful governments, far from anyone who would tell him what he must be. Yet now, in one night, he had been trapped again, not by human laws but by something older and even harder to escape. He turned to the daughters, searching their faces. One looked frightened, her lips pressed together, her hands twisting at her sides. The other held his gaze for a moment, and in her eyes he saw not anger but a kind of sadness, as if she too felt caught in a net she had not chosen. That gave him a strange comfort, though it also made the knot in his chest tighter. The mother stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. Tomorrow the council will meet. They will decide if you will be punished, or if you will take the bond. There is no third path. Until then, you remain in this hall under guard. Do not think of running. The law binds you as tightly as any chain. She turned and left, her robes sweeping the floor like a dark tide. The guards moved to the doors, standing like statues with long spears of silver light. Daniel sat alone. Under the blue glow, his thoughts a storm he could not escape. He thought of Earth, of the places he had once walked as a boy, of the laughter of people he had lost. He thought of how far he had come, to a lonely outpost where he believed no one could find him. And now, of all things, fate had found him here, in the form of two alien daughters and a law older than his world itself. The night stretched long, but sleep never came. The hall seemed to whisper around him, as if the stones themselves remembered the cries of others who had once stood where he now sat. He wondered how many had been trapped before him, how many had fought and how many had given in. When dawn came, the doors opened and the mother returned, the daughters following behind. The hall filled with people of their kind, tall and shining, their voices rising in song-like tones as they prepared for the gathering of the council. Daniel's heart beat hard, each thump echoing in his ears like the steps of giants. The mother raised her voice to the crowd. This human touched my daughters. The law demands judgment. Today the council will decide his fate. The daughters stood close, their eyes on Daniel, as if waiting to see what he would do. And in that moment, as the people of another world stared at him, Daniel realized the truth. His life was no longer his own. He was standing at the edge of something vast, a story written not in human words, but in the stars themselves. And whether he liked it or not, he was part of it now. Great hall of judgment filled with voices as the council gathered. Daniel stood in the center, a lone human surrounded by tall figures whose glowing eyes seemed to pierce into his soul. The council chamber was carved from stone that had stood for thousands of years, its walls covered with marks of old battles and victories, reminders that their people had survived by strength and law alone. The scent of burning resin filled the air, and every sound echoed in the vast dome above. The alien mother stood at the front, her daughters behind her. Their eyes were lowered, but their faces told the truth Daniel could read without words. They were frightened for him, but powerless against the law of their people. The eldest of the council, a towering figure draped in silver cloth, raised his staff and silence fell. His voice was deep and slow like the rumble of mountains. The human touched the daughters of our house. The law is clear. Such an act is no small thing. The bond must be judged. The law cannot be broken. Daniel felt his fists clench. He wanted to shout that this was madness, that he had no choice in this, but something inside warned him that anger here would only fuel their belief that he was unworthy. He forced himself to breathe. One of the council members, a warrior with scars across his face, stepped forward. His voice carried scorn. This human is weak. He does not know our ways. He cannot defend. He cannot lead. He is not worthy of a bond with daughters of noble blood. Let the punishment fall. Let him be broken for daring to touch what is not his. The crowd stirred, voices rising, some agreeing, some whispering doubts. Daniel felt his heart pound harder. He was no warrior, no great leader, only a man who had lived quietly fixing machines and avoiding the power of others. But here, in this circle, he was seen as something far smaller than even that, an intruder, a mistake, a threat to their honor. The mother's voice cut through the noise. He will not be broken so quickly. The law demands fairness. He must face the trial of worthiness. If he fails, his life will be taken. If he survives, he will belong to my daughters. That is the way of our people. The words fell like heavy stones. Daniel understood now that there was no escape. He would be forced into a trial he did not even know, judged by rules he had never been taught. He felt the weight of fear pressing on his chest, yet somewhere deep within, a spark of defiance lit. If they wanted to see him as weak, as unworthy, then he would show them the one strength they could not understand: his humanity. The council agreed, and the hall shook with the sound of the gavel striking stone. The trial would begin at the next rise of the suns. Until then, Daniel was kept under guard in a small chamber, his thoughts heavy and restless. That night, one of the daughters came quietly to him. She looked around to make sure the guards did not hear before speaking. Her voice trembled. "You must be careful. The trial is not simple combat. It will test your mind, your courage, and your heart. Many of our own people have failed. You are only human. Yet you stood against the sled to save us when no one else moved. That is why part of me believes you may succeed." Daniel stared at her, the weight of her words both a comfort and a burden. "I didn't mean to bind myself to anyone. I was only trying to help." Her eyes softened. "I know. But intention does not change the law. And now your choice is not about what you wanted, but about survival." Before she left, she whispered again, almost too soft to hear, "Do not fight like them. They respect power, but they have forgotten what true strength is. Show them something different. Show them what it means to be human." Her words stayed with him through the long night. When dawn broke, the trial began. The chamber opened to a wide arena carved deep into the mountain. Thousands of their people filled the seats. Above, their voices echoing like thunder. The council stood high, watching every move. In the center, Daniel stood alone, his breath clouding in the cold air. The warrior with scars, the one who had mocked him, stepped forward as his first challenger. His voice boomed across the arena. "Human, today you will die. You are no mate for daughters of noble blood. I will crush you before their eyes." The crowd roared in approval. The warrior charged, his strength like a storm. Daniel's heart raced, but he remembered the daughter's words. "Do not fight like them." He moved quickly, dodging the first strike, his body relying on speed and instinct rather than brute force. The warrior swung again and again, but Daniel used the ground, the walls, every trick he knew from years of working with his hands and surviving alone. He was not stronger, but he was clever, and cleverness kept him alive. The crowd shouted in shock when Daniel managed to make the warrior stumble. He did not try to strike back with power he did not have. Instead, he forced the warrior into his own mistakes, using his anger against him. At last, the warrior fell hard against the stone, unable to rise. The arena grew silent. The council watched closely. Daniel could feel every eye burning into him. He had not won with brute force, but he had survived, and survival itself was a victory. But the trial was not over. He faced beasts from alien worlds, traps of fire and water, puzzles meant to break the mind. Each test pushed him to the edge, yet each time he found strength not in power but in resilience, in compassion, in the will to keep moving even when every step felt impossible. The daughters watched from the side, their faces filled with something new: hope. For the first time, they began to believe the human might endure what no one expected him to survive. By the time the suns began to set, Daniel was bloodied, bruised, and near collapse, but he still stood. The crowd that had once mocked him now whispered in uneasy respect. The council had not spoken yet, but the silence in their eyes showed they too were beginning to see him differently. Daniel's chest heaved as he looked up at them. He was afraid still, but inside that fear was something new: resolve. He had not chosen this path, but he would not be crushed by it. If survival was the only choice, then survive he would, not as their pawn but as himself. And as the mother rose to speak, the suspense hung heavy in the air, for everyone knew the trial was not yet complete. The hardest test was still to come, and only then would his fate be sealed. The arena was silent now, the sun low in the sky casting long shadows over the stone walls. Daniel stood alone, bruised, bleeding, and tired beyond imagining, yet every fiber of his body refused to give in. He had survived every challenge so far, not by strength, but by using his mind, his courage, and his heart. The daughters watched from the sidelines, their hands clutched together, their faces pale but determined. Even the mother, standing tall with her arms crossed, seemed to study him with a mixture of doubt and curiosity. The council spoke, their voices echoing in the arena. The final trial will begin. This trial is the ultimate test. It is not just about strength. It is about loyalty, courage, and the ability to protect. If the human fails, he will be removed forever. If he survives, he will belong to the daughters by law. Let it begin. A rumble shook the ground. From the shadows emerged the final challenge, a beast taller than any Daniel had ever seen. Its skin shimmered like metal, and its eyes glowed red with hunger and cunning. It snarled, baring rows of sharp teeth, and the crowd gasped. Even the warriors of the alien world stepped back, unsure if the human could survive this. Daniel's heart raced, yet he remembered the words of the daughters. Do not fight like them. They respected power, but they had forgotten what true strength is. He could not face this creature with brute force. He had no weapon strong enough to pierce its armor, no armor to stop its attacks. He closed his eyes for a brief moment and focused. Survival depended on observation, on understanding the beast, and on acting with thought, not anger. The creature lunged, fast and merciless. Daniel rolled aside, feeling the wind of its claws brush past him. He darted behind a stone pillar, keeping it in view. The daughters' eyes widened in fear as they saw the speed and cunning of the beast. Every step he took was measured, every move careful. He watched for patterns in its attacks, searching for weakness. Minutes passed like hours. The sun dipped lower, and the crowd watched in silence. Daniel noticed the creature favored one side, its left leg weaker, its left eye twitching slightly when it focused. He saw the opening he needed, not to kill but to survive. Using the terrain, the shadows, and his own agility, he led the beast into a trap of fallen rocks he had noticed earlier. The beast roared, caught and struggling, but Daniel did not strike it down. Instead, he used sticks and stones to guide it away from himself and toward a pit hidden behind the arena wall. With a final push, the creature fell into the pit. The crowd erupted in shock. It had not been destroyed, only controlled, only redirected. Daniel's chest heaved with exhaustion, yet a smile flickered across his face. He had survived not through domination, but through strategy, through thinking and caring, through using his mind as his greatest weapon. The council murmured among themselves. This was unexpected. No human, no stranger from the stars had ever faced this trial and survived. The mother's eyes softened, though she did not speak. The daughters ran forward and touched his arms gently, their fear giving way to admiration. Their eyes now shone not with worry, but with trust. The final part of the trial came next. Daniel had to prove loyalty and courage, not only in facing beasts, but in protecting the daughters themselves. The council created a scenario, a simulated attack by rival warriors of their kind, testing whether he would shield the daughters at any cost. Daniel's mind raced. The daughters were not illusions. They were real, breathing, fragile lives that he had promised to protect without even meaning to. He could not fail. When the warriors appeared, armed with energy blades and shields, Daniel did not hesitate. He guided the daughters behind cover, using his body as a shield, dodging attacks and creating openings for them to escape. The warriors underestimated him, expecting panic, expecting weakness. Instead, they faced determination, quick thinking, and unwavering courage. Each strike he avoided, each move he made, protected the daughters without harming them. The daughters began to see the truth. Here was a human who could face monsters, who could survive impossible odds, who could think beyond strength alone and act with care. Their hearts, once tied to fear and tradition, now felt admiration and hope. The mother's eyes, once blazing with anger, now studied him quietly. She saw what her people often missed, a strength that came from the heart, from loyalty, from courage that did not need violence to be true. The trial lasted hours. Sunlight faded, leaving the arena bathed in the light of twin moons. Daniel, bleeding and bruised, still stood. Every council member, every watcher, every alien in the arena knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. The human had faced impossible trials, controlled beasts, outwitted warriors, and protected the daughters without hesitation. He had survived by being human, by being what their laws had never anticipated. Finally, the mother stepped forward. Silence fell over the arena. "Human," she said, her voice calm but powerful. "You have survived the trial of worthiness. You have faced the beasts, the warriors, and the challenges of our law, not with force alone, but with courage and loyalty. By the code of our people, the law demands you as the mate of my daughters. You are worthy." The daughters ran to him, tears streaming down their faces. "We believed in you," one whispered, "even when no one else did. You are not only brave, but kind. You are human, and that is why we trust you." Daniel's chest swelled with relief and disbelief. He had not only survived, but he had changed how these proud people saw him. He had proved that strength was not only measured by muscle or dominance, but by heart, intelligence, and courage. The mother approached him, placing her hand gently on his shoulder. "You have earned your place. You are no longer a stranger. You are bound by law, yes, but also by respect. The daughters have chosen to trust you. That is more than law can demand." As the moons rose higher, Daniel realized that the trial had changed everything. Fear and uncertainty still lingered, but now there was trust, respect, and a strange new bond that promised a future he had never imagined. The daughters smiled. The council nodded, and even the mother allowed a quiet approval. In the stillness of the arena, Daniel understood that survival was not the only victory. True strength lay in courage, in compassion, and in standing firm when everything seemed impossible. He had passed the trial, and the story of the human who faced the laws of another world would be remembered for generations. The arena was quiet now, the crowds having left, leaving only echoes of what had happened. Daniel stood in the center, his body battered and bruised, but his heart lighter than it had been in years. The daughters approached him, their faces glowing with relief and happiness. They had been afraid for him, unsure if he could survive the trial of worthiness. But now their fear had turned into admiration and trust. The mother came forward, her robes brushing the stone floor. Her expression was calm, but her eyes showed a depth of respect that Daniel had never expected. "You have proven yourself human. You have faced every challenge, every danger, and survived not only by skill but by heart. The law demanded you as the mate of my daughters. Now it is clear that it was not only law but also truth. You are worthy, and they trust you." Daniel bowed his head slightly, overwhelmed. He had never imagined being bound to a law of another world, never imagined that a simple act of kindness could change his life so completely. And yet, here he was, standing among people who had once seemed so alien and distant, now looking at him with trust and hope. One of the daughters stepped closer, her hand brushing against his arm. "We do not see this as punishment," she said softly. "We see it as a bond. You did not choose us by law, but by courage. You are human, and that is why we believe in you. You have a place here if you want it." The words struck Daniel deeply. For the first time since arriving on this edge of the galaxy, he felt a sense of belonging. He had spent so long running from rules, from expectations, from the judgments of others. Now he had found a place where he could stand as himself, not only surviving, but respected, trusted, and needed. The mother nodded slowly, placing her hands on the daughter's shoulders. "The council has agreed. You may choose to stay or leave. But understand that the bond is recognized across the stars. You are now part of this family, and the law will not allow anyone to harm you or them. Your courage has rewritten how our people see humans. You are no longer merely a stranger. You are an example of what humanity can offer." Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of those words. He had not only survived, he had changed the perception of an entire alien culture. He had shown that humans were not weak, that they were capable of courage, loyalty, and wisdom that rivaled the strongest of the stars. The realization filled him with pride, but also with humility. He had faced dangers he could not have imagined, and yet he had emerged with more than survival. He had emerged with respect and trust. The daughters smiled at him, their hands still in his. They no longer seemed afraid, nor hesitant. Instead, there was warmth in their eyes, a connection that had been forged through the trials, through fear and hope, through courage and loyalty. Daniel realized that this bond was not only legal or cultural, but deeply personal. They had chosen to trust him, and he had chosen to protect them with everything he had. The mother stepped back, her expression softening further. "Go, human, walk among us, learn and grow. The law will watch, but you are no longer alone. You have proven yourself in ways that no human before you has done. Your presence here is a gift to our people, and a bridge between worlds." As the mother spoke, the daughters led Daniel through the hall and out into the open air. The twin moons had risen, casting silver light over the colony. The air was cool, filled with the scents of strange plants and distant seas. Daniel looked up, taking it all in. He had feared this place, feared the law and the trials, but now it felt different. He felt at home in a world he had once thought completely alien. One of the daughters spoke softly. "Do you understand now why the law exists? Not to punish, but to protect. To ensure that those who are bound together can survive, can trust, and can care for each other. You have passed what none of us expected. You are worthy, not because of power, but because of heart." Daniel nodded. "I understand. I have never faced anything like this before. But I also understand now that courage, loyalty, and care are stronger than fear or anger. I am human, yes, but I am also myself. And that is enough to make a difference." The daughters smiled, their eyes reflecting the light of the moons. For the first time, Daniel felt that he belonged somewhere outside his own world, not because he had been forced by law, but because he had proven himself through action, through heart, and through courage. He realized that this bond, forged in fear and trial, had become something he wanted, something he could cherish. The mother watched silently as they walked, a faint smile touching her lips. The law had been fulfilled, yes, but what had truly been accomplished was more than legality. The human had survived, yes, but he had also taught them something of value, something beyond strength, beyond tradition, beyond fear. He had shown them humanity in its truest form, and that was something no law alone could demand. That As they reached the edge of the colony, Daniel looked out at the stars. He had once believed that life was about survival alone, that quiet days and simple work were all that mattered. But now he saw a greater truth. Life was about courage, about connection, about standing firm when everything seemed impossible. And in this galaxy of strange laws and alien cultures, he had done just that. The daughters walked beside him, their hands brushing his as they spoke quietly of the future. Daniel smiled, feeling hope, trust, and love in ways he had never imagined. The mother stayed back, watching with quiet approval, knowing that the human had become more than an outsider. He had become part of something greater, part of a bond that would endure across worlds. And in that moment, Daniel understood the full meaning of the law, the trial, and the journey he had taken. He had faced the impossible, survived the unthinkable, and found a place where he could belong. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating his courage and the humanity that had won the respect of a proud alien culture. In a galaxy where strength had always ruled, it was the human heart that had truly triumphed. Daniel looked at the daughters and whispered, "I will stay. Not because the law demands it, but because I choose to. I choose to protect, to care, and to be part of this family. I am human, yes, but I am also yours, in the only way that matters, by choice." The daughters smiled, their eyes shining with tears and hope. The mother nodded, her expression soft but proud. And together, they walked into the future, a human and two daughters bound by courage, trust, and a bond that no law, no challenge, and no fear could ever break. The galaxy watched, silent and vast, as a new story began. A story of trust, courage, and humanity rising among the stars. The end.